Good morning.
Good morning.
Nancyann Turner, formerly our Sister Maurice Marie. And how did you get Maurice Marie?
Actually, I chose the name from my father and my mother.
Oh, very good. That's good. Your father's name was Maurice. Well, I tried to use my father's name and they wouldn't let me do it. But anyway, so Maurice Marie. All right, now you grew up, I was surprised, in Peoria, Illinois.
I was born there.
You were born there.
But we moved early on when I was just maybe 2 years old to Michigan.
Okay. Now what happened?
My dad got a promotion to be in charge of agriculture in Michigan.
Oh.
He worked for the Department of Agriculture. So that's really that's my main memory of childhood.
So then you came to Detroit?
Only after I was a Dominican sister.
Oh,
we lived in Lansing all my whole life.
Lansing, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's why I was surprised, because I thought you were from Lansing and to see Peoria. I know your family. A little background on your family.
I was the oldest. There were 5 children, and I had 2 wonderful sisters and 2 wonderful brothers. And my dad was a farmer, scientist, a plant pathologist, a botanist, and so we grew up planting gardens a lot.
Really? No, I didn't know that. Okay.
And my mom was she eventually became a teacher, but she was a wonderful musician, a wonderful pianist. She sang a lot. We sang a lot of Irish songs. And, I think my mom and dad just really raised us with a lot of good values. My dad was a Protestant. He wasn't Catholic. And so that was my first experience of diversity. That the whole part of the family didn't have any Catholic background at all. And I can remember in school, my second grade teacher, I think, said only Catholics go to heaven. And I remember going up to her.
Were you in a Catholic school?
I was in a Resurrection.
Resurrection.
Yeah. And I went up to her and said, very politely, as I was 6 years old or 7,
Good for you.
You must be mistaken. My daddy is not Catholic, and he's going to heaven for sure.
Isn't that something?
Yeah,
Little theologian there, so young.
So anyway,
So your home life, it sounds as though there was a lot of joy there.
Yeah, it was a good home life. I think we, my dad traveled a lot during the week, so Friday nights we would always try to keep safe just for family, and we would play board games and cards and have popcorn, and then we took some nice vacations. We were right by Michigan State University,
right?
So we often went out
Education.
there to see things or do things, because education was real important in my family, as well as faith, family, arts.
So many values.
A lot of values, and
that you brought with you.
I think so, yes.
So you went to high school at Resurrection?
I did.
So you had Dominicans all your life?
All my life.
Educational life, at least the first 12?
Yes.
And what was it in particular that you decided about entering? What experience
nobody really brought it up to me. I was pretty wild. Nobody brought it up to me or pushed me. I think it really was an inner call, a really inner call. However, I must say I was very inspired by the Adrian Dominicans. I still remember Gene O'Loughlin taught me, and Madeline Sophie, and Noreen O'Connell, Kathleen Treese. And I remember I was very impressed and touched by the joy and the good nature and the support of many Adrian Dominican sisters. But I think it was greatly an inner call also. Yeah.
And the values you came to school with, your family values, and I'm sure there were some that were nurtured as you were in school there, and particularly closer to high school when you were leaving and making decisions.
I think also that going to the Resurrection School, we were also part of the Resurrection Parish.
Correct.
And that was probably my first experience of community. It was a wonderful place to grow up, a faith community that really spilled out through all the neighborhoods. So I've always been grateful for that experience.
And that was the era at the time. I mean, you really did.
The parish.
The parish community, besides your family and the block that you lived in.
Yes.
We had the block rosary. We had block
we
parties.
Did too.
We did. You did no TV, and kids were outside playing with each other. But that, church community was very significant, I think, in growing up.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
And freedom. We were safe. We walked 4 or 5 blocks to school.
And after football games at midnight. not a worry.
Well, no, we didn't have a high school where I went, but
okay.
yeah. So your vocation was stirring within you. I always say, I don't think I chose religious life. I think I was chosen.
I was chosen.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think the older I get
Yeah.
and the more experiences I have, that's, they didn't have a tap on the shoulder or someone in particular. But perhaps you had a mentor, someone that you, or did you, when you were in high school or?
I think one of the more significant ones was Marie Eleanor Troy and Maxine Campbell. But I really I really had good relations with all of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who was your sponsor?
Maxine, Sister
I don't
Maxine.
think I don't know.
She was in Chicago
Okay.
soon after that. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So, and what was it about Maxine that?
I think that she was just so human and so honest with us, and just full of energy and joy. But most of the sisters I had were like that. Yeah. Yeah. So
very positive.
yes, it was a positive
Very
experience.
positive
yes.
experience. So then you entered right after high school,
That's right.
2 weeks after?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
I remember calling out Sister Margaret Phillip and saying I had a chance for a party. Could I delay it a couple of weeks? But she said no. So
You were obedient right before, even before you entered.
I guess so. Yeah.
And you had a large crowd, a large group of women that you
That's
entered
right.
with at
That's
the
right,
time.
yeah.
Very faithful.
And many of them are still very good friends. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So then your ministerial life. Now I know you've been in many significant ministries
Yeah.
that have touched you and changed you, as you have touched others,
Yeah.
and others have been transformed by your presence with them
Yeah.
and your ministry with them. Would you like to share a couple of
Yeah,
that?
I was thinking about that. I think I was able to serve in leadership 3 times. And I think that I got to know hundreds of our sisters, as you did. And I think I loved them. I loved walking with them. I was in awe of them, the beauty and the goodness of our women and their commitment, their faith, and their resiliency. So that certainly, I was so blessed by that. And then I think I had begun to learn about poverty when I was in Georgia and Washington, D.C., and then in Detroit at the Capuchin Soup Kitchen. But I think it was the 20 years at the Capuchin Soup Kitchen that probably was the most significant time of my life, that it just changed me deeply. And I came to face the terrible impact of racism as well as poverty on children. And working with those families, being with those families, it changed my life forever. Yeah.
Tell us exactly I know you did many things, and one thing led to something else in those
Yeah.
20 years, so.
Well, it was always supposed to be a program for children and teens and families. And so it started out, and also so many of them were impacted by trauma. So we were trying to also be conscious of the violence that they were most of them in their neighborhoods. So we started out with art therapy, counseling, and eventually I found out they were all failing school, so we started tutoring. And then as another way to challenge violence, we started a garden program.
Right, that
so
was
that
great.
so they were about creation, not just destruction. And that's one of my most favorite programs.
Did you realize when your mother, who was such a good guy, you learned that?
I know, I was so grateful
Interesting.
that my dad and mom were so much into gardening because it wasn't part of the job resume, but it just made such sense to me.
Right.
And it had wonderful impacts on the children, both teamwork and being creative, but also being able to take home good food to their families. So
Did any of the, if they could, the families also do gardening at their own homes?
We tried that, and I think, and some of them did, but the neighborhood was pretty overrun with dogs,
I know.
and they were renting, and so the soil had not been taken care of in years. But they loved the program, and boy, those fried green tomatoes were their favorite, and the greens, So yeah. So, but it was I loved that part of it, yeah. And then as the children got older, we also did a lot of things for teens. took them on field trips, took them to make retreats, with UD High School, UD Mercy. Jesse Cox did some really wonderful things with them.
That's right, I remember Jesse.
College visits, teen support groups. So things evolved as the younger children, and then as they became teens, they still needed different kinds of support. And we did a mother support group also, and then we did a peace camp.
Now you say we. I know you kind of directed it all, but you couldn't do it all by yourself.
No, I was able to hire.
Good.
Eventually, when I left, there were 3 people at our team, wonderful people, well experienced African Americans, and I just loved working with them. And I loved being there.
Yeah, I know you did.
Yeah.
We all know you did. Yeah.
So anyway.
We all kind of helped you in your ministry at different times. Yeah.
And also, what was is that I was so blessed by Nokomis and Great Lakes chapter.
Yes.
They bought the Christmas cards. They donated the Easter baskets.
Right.
They brought in school supplies. I mean, really, I felt it was a chapter endeavor in so many ways.
We thought of that with the Halloween candy and the assembly. Of course, assembly was later.
Yeah.
But it seems funny not to be
I
bringing
know,
something
not to be
for
selling
Nancy.
Christmas cards, not to be, Christmas
Right.
presents,
You were truly a blessing.
Well, I loved being in that, having the whole chapter care about the soup kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah, that certainly was an area that the chapter was attuned to.
They were, yeah.
As we look at the resilient communities we've spent time with.
You ask about ministry. I think in general, as I look back, every ministry, the ministry was never just a job.
No.
It was always a relationship, a community, a blessing, and I just feel like that was a good. Yeah.
So you retired after. I'm going to get back to you were there for 20 years. How many of those that you started out with, the children, have come back?
Oh, quite a few.
Quite a few,
yeah.
And where has their beginnings gotten to a point right now? And what were you most surprised at, perhaps, of some of your students that came back to say hello?
Things that they remembered.
Good.
Sayings I would make,
Okay.
And I think that it's still a challenge to grow up in that neighborhood.
Right.
So not as many have gone to college as I would have hoped. I think that even today, as we look at that neighborhood, we want to do more with job training, things like that.
Right.
But that they have loved their children and they have loved their family, and they. Many of them have told me I was their first experience of a white woman who was kind to them, and I was their first experience of another culture working with them, and so I feel like we got along pretty well. I mean,
how did you decide that it was time to move on? You recently retired, whatever that means. You recently left that position.
Well, I'd been there 20 years, and I had a great team, and I realized that I just didn't have quite as enough energy as I used to.
Right.
Especially on field trips. I just couldn't truck along. Greenfield Village wore me out, and I never used to. So I just felt like 20 years. I would have stayed longer if I could have gone part-time. I would have definitely stayed longer, but there wasn't any way that as the director I could be part-time.
Right.
So that kind of helped.
But your succession planning, I mean, no one can take your place, but the position, you found someone that...
Not exactly, but that's another story. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the team I had are still there, and they're working really well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's better just to leave. So, as much as you knew yourself well enough to know that you could not give like you would like to give.
Well, I figured.
Yeah. The way you did.
I was 82 years old. It was probably time to quit a full-time job. Yeah.
So that transition into a full-time job, how's the new normal? I know I mentioned to you that before, and it's a long transition.
Well, excuse me, I definitely don't think I'm finished with ministry.
No.
I definitely, and I've got a few ideas, but I just think I want to sit back, do some discernment, do some prayer, get some things organized, and then I feel something will come along. I love doing women's groups. I loved working with pregnant girls. I loved doing therapy with children. I did women's support group scripture at the soup kitchen for years. So I feel like I'm really willing to do something 2 or 3 afternoons a week, but I haven't discovered it yet.
Well, I think that's what I mean by you're not going every day to the soup kitchen in downtown Detroit.
No.
You now, you let go of that. You were so busy, you were exhausted, and so now you've transitioned to something totally new.
And I'm waiting for the Spirit to tell me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you have to do, and just to listen and be patient with that.
Yeah, I am.
But when you're so busy.
Yeah, I know. Things stacked up. I didn't finish quilts. I didn't finish.
That's right, your quilts.
So, but I'm kind of moving towards that for now. Yeah.
And are you at peace with being in this waiting time?
Oh, I'm very at peace.
Oh, good.
I'm very at peace with it. I know that I've done my best, that I'm not finished, but that I'm just in a wonderful in-between time.
Right, and we're never finished.
No,
Whether it's a
Not
job or
till
ministry,
right.
no, not when we've been gifted with good health and energy, and maybe it's decreased, which is okay, and it's all right just to say no.
Well, I think that I do need more. I hate to admit it. I need more sleep. My legs don't work quite as well, but aging has still been good to me.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And you've been good to aging and sleep. You know, and you get in a group and everyone's exhausted. How do you feel about that? They're exhausted, they're tired, they ran to this meeting, ran to that meeting, and you can just go home and be.
Yes.
Contemplatively.
I hope so. I am.
Do you have some words of wisdom for us?
Well, I think that I've always lived by that John 10 quote. I have come that you might have life and have it to the full. And I just, even when we're doing mission group discussions on Sunday, it seems like the core of it is what kind of groupings give us life? What kind of groups bless us? And so, and I also have loved that line, I can't remember where it is, where Jesus says, I am with you always.
Good.
And I've always felt that sacred presence.
And to remember that as we're engaged in this, whatever we're engaged in.
Yes, that God is with us. Yes.
Yeah, and to live it.
And I've loved this life. I've been blessed by good friends, good family, many blessings. And so I'm grateful.
We've recently experienced a couple very significant gatherings with our gathering this summer, the Encuentro, and looking toward the future, and then the interesting dynamic of this past weekend, not only with the whole government structure, but with all the questions about the resilient communities. You can't. You can rest, but the work.
Oh no, we're going to keep on trucking.
We're going to keep on. So tell me, as you look at the Encuentro, what significant, or was there some significance for you in that experience?
It seemed, as I remember, it seemed just full of energy and of hope and of life. But I do have to admit, I was quite numb. I had just come from burying my sister 2 days earlier, so I really tried to participate, but it was a hard time. But I remember some of the words early on that really touched my heart, that charism doesn't need big numbers. And that you can make, and it was right after I had just retired too. So I love those words, you can make a difference. No matter how small, you can make a difference. So I thought those 2 lines about charism and making a difference, they really fed my soul, especially at that time.
I just recently read a quote that they said, Dorothy Day said, it's not that we have to be effective, it's that we have to be faithful. And I think that kind of says to me, engaged in ministry or engaged in a job, you got to do it more productive. But to be faithful, faithful to the call, to be faithful to whatever. That kind of spoke to me.
And a lot of times you're just planting seeds that somebody else will harvest.
Right.
But I remember somebody asked me once about how did I see success? And I said, well, I wasn't really sure what that would always look like, but I knew I had loved every child. And to me, that was the best I could promise.
there were days.
There were hundreds of children, thousands of children, and I did love them, and their moms, and their grandmas, and their dads when they were there.
And in leadership, you did the same with our sisters, with us.
I think
our
so.
women.
I loved them. Yes.
Yeah. I'll never forget the time I said that at one of the assemblies, and there was someone said, "No one has ever said that to me." I think maybe she couldn't remember it,
Yeah,
but anyway, so I don't think we can say that enough. And significantly,
Yeah.
Say something like that. Or so, is there anything about you that you haven't shared that perhaps we would be surprised about, Nancyann
Can't
Turner?
think of anything.
Really?
No, I just am who I am. Yeah, yeah.
There's no little something hidden in there, huh? Well, I'm sorry to hear about your sister. That was your first sibling?
Yes, and it was very hard.
Yeah.
Both because she had many health issues, but she always recovered. She always got better. So she had like 9 lives. And so when she died, it was like a shock because she always recovered.
We came back.
But I just am very grateful. I think that we weren't just siblings. We were their best friends. And she walked with me
Right.
in mountains and in valleys, and I loved being with her, and I would love talking with her, and she was just a dear friend.
Good. My sympathy
Thank you.
continues. Takes a long time to get
takes-
through
yeah.
when you lose siblings.
I know you've experienced
Yeah.
it too.
Is there anything that else you want to tell us? That
No,
you were hoped I would ask you what, and I didn't.
I can't think of anything.
I think I got so engaged in the conversation.
I think
Yeah.
I'm just grateful for life and grateful for the many blessings, and hope that I can continue to walk with people in a positive way, and that I would be remembered as just a compassionate, caring person, loving life, loving congregation, and I think one of your questions was, what are you passionate about? And I really care about our children. They're growing up in such a wounded world. And I just really hope that there'll be many advocates for children these days.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
There's so much to be done, and it's good to be focused
Yes.
in one area. And we'll just have to hold these,
Yeah.
all the proposals we heard, or whatever we call the resilient communities.
Yes. Yeah.
Not projects, processes. We just hold that in prayer.
Yes.
And ask God, I'm with you always, to be with us as we look at where the greatest need
was
is.
powerful.
All of them were needs.
Oh, to
all
see
of them.
all those needs,
Yeah.
and that we've got a connection with them.
Yeah, and we can't save the world.
Yeah.
But we can be a little part of it, and that's saving the world, one person at a time.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
so thank you, Sister Nancyann Turner, formerly Sister Maurice Marie, for
A
your
long time ago.
right. One of our benefactors asked that we say both the names
Oh, really?
because they know, because the benefactors for YouTube do see this,
I see.
and
Okay.
they tune in and would like to know. Now, oh my word, that was Nancyann Turner. So, thank you so much for the gift that you have been to the city of Detroit and to many other places that you have ministered, and to our women for all those 12, 13 years that you were in leadership.
And I loved every bit of it. Yeah.
I know, I can hear you. I know you can't even explain that to people. It was a true blessing.
Yes.
Yeah. And I said, never look like you were tired. Just look like you enjoy it, because you know what? We did.
We did.
So that was a blessing to our women. So thank you in the name of the congregation for all you've done, for all you continue to be in our name, and for the gifts that you have so freely given and shared with all of us. You are
You're
truly
welcome.
a special woman.
You are welcome,
Sister.
and blessings on you.
Yes. Thanks, Nancyann.